Hello and welcome to Gotham Sound TV. Today we are doing an Ask Me Anything segment with the illustrious Glenn Sanders from Zaxcom. Glenn, thanks for being here.
It's great to be here, Nick.
So what brings you to Queens?
Oh, that's a loaded question.
Okay.
Well, I'm here to promote my new album.
Ah, very nice. And what's it titled?
It's Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Wireless Transmitter.
Okay, very good. Well, listen, thank you all for tuning in. We're live right now. Thank you for being here, Glenn.
It's great to be here.
So I guess let's just dive right in, if you're all right with that.
Yeah, we can dive.
All right, so first and foremost, so Blaine Bailey, I see you already have this in your hand, says, let's see this MIcPlexer.
Okay, so this is the MIcPlexer 3. It is very similar in many aspects to the previous MIcPlexer 2. It's the same size. It's basically the same I/O kind of thing, but it has some really nice new features. Basically, with the MIcPlexers, we had a request from quite a few customers to increase the operational bandwidth. And when I say operational bandwidth, I mean the bandwidth of the filter, the tunable filter. So it's gone from the MIcPlexer 2's 35 megahertz to about 50 megahertz on this. And the tuning range is greatly expanded. We can tune from 470 megahertz to 660. And then there's a jump where it goes from like 750 up to 960. It's kind of two tuning ranges because there's two variable filters in it. Technically, there's four filters because it's a two-channel device. So you've got your input. Two inputs drive four outputs each. And also it's got a variable attenuator in it. So you're able to have plus 6 dB outputs. You can have 6 dB of gain, and you can dial that down to an attenuation of 10 dB if you're going to be working super close to it and you're worried about overload. It actually has two overload LEDs on it that'll tell you if you're in an overload situation. And you actually have a digital display that has an RF meter on it, or two RF meters. So you can really get a really good look as far as what you have coming into it in terms of RF levels. So there's a lot going on with this. So it's basically meant to be just a really nice successor to the old MIcPlexer. And I think the important thing with this is it does have that filter. So this is a real-time analysis of input to output through the MIcPlexer. And you can see there's two markers on the top that show you in this scale that that's approximately 50 megahertz. You get a nice flat band pass. And there's a marker over on the left side, which is set to 470 megahertz. So you can see that when you're tuned to approximately 550, you've got about 27 dB worth of attenuation where walkie-talkies would appear. If you look at, the kind of antenna distribution that's offered from other manufacturers, none of them offer this kind of filtering, if any filtering at all. It's really important to have this kind of thing because, what's going to wipe you out on set? It's going to be walkie-talkies, and those are generally at about 460. And in fact, you do have what they call T-band land mobile radio still out there. So you can have something like an ambulance go past your set, and they're transmitting maybe with a 100-watt transmitter from the car, and that is totally going to be a problem. And of course, you've got cell phones on set. So if you have no bandpass filtering, in the 600s, and you have no bandpass filtering in the 470s, you can get wiped out.
Right.
So
we've definitely seen that before, especially with a 4-watt walkie.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, with this, you would have, 27 dB of attenuation at the walkie frequencies. That's more than good enough that a walkie is not going to get close enough to your receiver antenna to cause any kind of damage to you. So I think a lot of these things are really about making sure that you can cover all of the situations that can wipe you out. Does that mean you're going to have that happen every day? No, of course it doesn't. And products without filters will work fine most of the time. we specialize in products that protect you all the time.
Right. And the thing that's interesting about this, one of the upgrades, right, is that you've gone from the manual switches on the MIcPlexer 2, right, to the digital programming.
That's right. It has the standard OLED display that we typically use, and you can now control the frequencies in 2 megahertz steps. So you've got very, very good resolution, and we've included 9 presets in here. So if you just want to switch back and forth between presets, it's really quick and easy to do it. So and I think it's going to be a really nice addition to our product line. It's something that people have definitely been asking for, and we're proud to finally be able to have it out there.
Got it. Okay. So keeping in line, and I will get to Jabari's question in a minute, but since we're talking about the MIcPlexer 3, how would Mike McFadden wants to know how a MIcPlexer 3 would improve the reception on an RX4, 812, or even the Novus filters?
I wouldn't say it generally improves it because of filtering. I mean, it does give you 6 dB of gain. It is a very super quiet thing. I mean, it's got a really low noise floor. So you would see possibly an increase in performance if you were in a very low RF environment. If you're in my proverbial Iowa cornfield, yeah, it's going to help you. If you're in Times Square, probably not, because it's going to give you an extra 6 dB of gain, but you don't need that gain there because the noise floor in Times Square is already very high. So it's a matter of getting the signal over the noise floor. So adding more gain doesn't help.
And is the filtering improved though over the the ones that he mentioned, the 4, the 8,
well,
12?
That's kind of a loaded question. It depends on your interpretation of improved.
Okay.
This is a wider filter than what is in our receivers. The receivers all have the 35 megahertz filter. So if this thing is sitting at a place where it's just right in the same frequency range as what the receiver's set to, it's really not helping you because the internal receiver filter is going to be 35 megahertz, and we can't change that. So really this product, the reason that it's really good is because the 55 megahertz filter is going to accommodate a wider bandwidth of receivers that are plugged into it, because you can have, let's say, 2 QRX 200s plugged in, and they're not tuned to the same frequencies, let's say. So, they're going to be doing their thing within that 50 megahertz. So you have, basically, you can have overlap, if I can use this as a situation here.
It's a butterfly.
So if you got 35 megahertz here and 35 megahertz here, you can put them where they both fit within that 50 megahertz, So, you get to be a little bit more creative of, when you use the MIcPlexer. But the filter's real purpose is to stop interfering signals from overloading the MIcPlexer's amplifier. Okay. Again, with any antenna distribution device, and I always say to people, don't use amplified antennas unless you have a really long run of lossy coax. That's like the only reason you would want to do it. Because if you have an amplifier in front of this and it gets wiped out because of, a walkie or cell phone or just a wireless transmitter very close to it, it could cause intermodulation products that fall within the filter of the receiver that you have hooked up. And that's a problem. So having a filter in the MIcPlexer protects the MIcPlexer's amp, so it's less likely that it's going to get wiped out, and it's going to do a better job of getting the signal to the receivers. So I don't think it's a matter of making, of it being a better thing in terms of better than the filter that's in the receiver. I think it's a matter of just having more flexibility in the frequencies that it outputs to multiple receivers, as it's designed to do. It is a device that primarily takes one set of antennas and distributes that to multiple receivers.
Right. So if you had, for instance, multiple QRX 200s, that might be more what that's designed for, or multiple RX8s or RX4s or however to distribute that. Okay.
Yeah. Lastly on it, and then we should probably move on.
Sure.
The the bandwidth of the filter, it's a trade-off. I mean, basically, I would love to have a filter that was 5 megahertz wide, but that wouldn't be a practical thing for people because they have, obviously more than 5 megahertz to work with. So you're really trying to have a balance between the bandwidth of the filter, being as narrow as you really can have it, and having it be wide enough to be practical.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So Jabari asked, he said, if I heard that right, does the fact that the MIcPlexer goes down to 470 mean that we'll be seeing 470 on transmitters and receivers in the future?
Well, I hate to speak about future features of future products or current products, but obviously that's an area that people can use. I've never been a big promoter down there, but obviously I realize that, we're really in need of whatever frequencies we can use.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say clearly, going forward, it's something where, we want any new product we put out or any respin of a current product to be able to cover as much frequency range as possible.
Okay. Yeah, excellent answer. All right. So Jabari also asked, and Jabari actually was the first question, but Jabari is excited to hear what's new. We talked about the MIcPlexer 3, but specifically wants to know where the digital modulation for the VTX is, which I think that's the other new thing you brought with you, and the additional, if there is going to be an updated Nova Touch with an RF page.
Okay. Well, let's talk about digital modulation for VRX and VTX.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We are currently, this very second, working on that. And the digital modulation, we have to be very careful in VHF, and we want to make sure to have a digital modulation that will not be the same as what we do in UHF. Okay, it's got to be very, very robust. Okay, and it also has to have really, really good distance. So, we're hoping to be able to put out information on that soon. I can't give you a definitive answer right now.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you do something like this, there's, a bit of science involved and product development.
Mm-hmm.
And, obviously because we're running FM modulation, which I will point out sounds really amazing on these products. But we do realize that, the goal was to have it to do both. And that is hopefully an imminent goal. But until we actually have it, no one should buy the product saying, oh, well, I bought it because of digital modulation. Okay. We want to be totally honest with everyone. And literally it could be available within the week.
Okay.
Okay. But if for some reason it isn't, we don't want to mislead anyone. We have all the best intentions in the world, I would believe. But it's just difficult to, promise things until they are ready to sell. And, I just want to be totally transparent here.
Mm-hmm.
But, if all goes well, we are super, super close.
So just to clarify something I heard, because it's new to me. So the VTX or the VTX IFB option in the Nova.
Yeah.
What you're looking at doing is having it be able to transmit analog FM to Comtech and digital to the VRX at the same time. Did I hear that right?
No, not at the same time. It's either
it's one or the other.
Yeah, it's FM mode or it's digital mode.
Okay.
And there you go. What it does do at the same time is you're able to actually transmit two different audio feeds, one on the ZaxNet 2.4 and one on the VHF channel. So it actually is it's two transmitters in one, giving you the ability to have, again, two different programs to different people on set.
Great. Awesome. And Jabari says, love it. Glad to hear it's possible. Just to follow up on Jabari's other question about a redesigned Nova Touch or an updated Nova Touch.
Yeah, there's no redesign coming on the Nova Touch. I mean, Nova Touch is a fully working thing. I know people want it to run on iOS, and I think some people may have gotten it to run with emulators and things, but it's an older program for us. Anything we do that's new is running on Linux. I mean, our main Linux program at this point supports RX12. It supports URXs. It supports the VRX. So it's kind of our very modern graphical user interface program, and we're adding more to that all the time. So, I mean, the only thing I can say is at some point it might be possible for us to add, some Nova control to that. Not something we're working on at the moment. But, basically the Nova Touch program is locked down. So, we've got to move ahead with other things. And, we like to update products for people all the time. I mean, what I don't want to hear is that, okay, you made the Nova and now there's the Nova 2 and I can't get an update from my Nova 1. What am I supposed to do? For instance, we made the VTX transmitter an option for both Nova 1 and Nova 2. Okay. We work really hard to protect the value of our customers' products. I think maybe more so than almost any other company out there. If you look at our wireless, you could take a wireless transmitter that Zaxcom, digital wireless transmitter that Zaxcom made literally 20 years ago. And it is absolutely compatible with every receiver we make today. Okay, we're not changing modulations to obsolete things. We're trying to keep things, absolutely to the point where everything is compatible. And that's not something that you see from the other manufacturers.
So you're specifically talking about like the TRX 900.
Yes, that's right. I mean, it may only do mono modulation, but all of our receivers can still receive that today. So I think that, providing good value for the customers and, maintaining functionality where possible is good business, And in fact, I might as well take this opportunity to get into something because it might be the elephant in the room later.
Okay. Well, I like elephants. I mean, we do have other questions. So if you, why don't we hold the elephant?
We'll hold that one. It'll probably
elephant.
come up.
Yeah, because we want to make sure that we get to Norm and Sam. So Norm from Ontario, Canada, north of the border.
We love the Canadians, by the way, despite what our government does.
Did you know I'm half Canadian? My dad's Canadian.
I can tell.
Oh, yeah.
You've got the look.
It's how I talk. What are we talking about? So general industry question, how far away are we from being able to send the full dynamic range of a lav boom mic to a recorder and recording 32-bit float files? Is that going to be digital with TDMA, WMAS, etc.? It's a big question. Where do you fall in all of those things? Because 32-bit is different than never clip. Slightly, and WMAS is a whole thing. So
I could talk for the next hour just on this question.
All right, take 5 minutes.
Okay,
go.
Let's talk about 32-bit float files. In my opinion, it's snake oil in terms of the recording process. It's not something that a professional recorder should do, and I see it as something that it does a lot of things. It doesn't prevent you from having distortion at the microphone, which you can have. It just does a really good job recording it. And then when the files get to post, they have to then be normalized so that, they're going to match up with the audio level of anything else you do. When you're out on location and recording 24-bit fixed files, you know where the dynamic range should be. You know where the headroom is. and it's 144 dB of dynamic range. Floating point files are wonderful for post-production because in post, if you EQ something, if you compress something, within the post-production process, you don't have to worry about clipping. But when you're out there recording, a 24-bit file, besides being physically smaller by 33%, is something that, is a professional thing to make sure that all the files you send to post are the correct dynamic range. And again, 144 dB is more than enough to give you the headroom that you need. So that's where I stand on that. When it comes to full dynamic range, I mean, when you talk dynamic range, either, dynamic range in my book is two things. It's the amount of dBs that you have, to record. So, we are sending the full dynamic range, or we're recording the full dynamic range in any case. And when it comes, and then you've got frequency response, which is different. I mean, the question is full dynamic range. We limit our wireless transmission to 16 kilohertz because this way you're not introducing stray audio that's maybe coming from alarm systems, things that are up around 18, 20 kilohertz that have to be filtered out in post. Nothing's coming out of anyone's mouth that is really over about 8, 10 kilohertz. I don't care. Maybe if you're a soprano opera singer, it's a different story. But even then, 16 kilohertz is going to cover everything. Of course, all the Beatle recordings were limited to 16 kilohertz. You know that.
I did not.
It is a fact.
Okay.
It is a fact.
Was that based on the microphones they used or the recording medium, or what was that based on?
I don't know if it was an absolute conscious choice, but I think it was probably more about the recorders of the day, running at so many inches per second of tape. So that's a question for my analog recording engineer friends. Maybe Al McGuire can chime in there.
Okay.
Because I know he did that for a long time.
Got it.
That's a shout out to you, Al.
All right. And so now the next talking point in Norm's question was mentioning TDMA, which I actually don't know what that stands for, and VMAS or WMAS.
Yeah, time domain multiple access and the WMAS thing. Again, that's a big one. In my opinion, and again, it's my opinion, that's not the direction we're going. Okay, because I see that as something that is not at all ready for our industry. When I look at some of the products that were announced by some of the other manufacturers, wireless microphones have to be very small, very lightweight, run a long time on a battery. And the products that I've seen introduced don't do that at all. And also, when it comes to spectrum, we have to be very, very efficient with our spectrum. If you look at what Zaxcom does, we have a great modulation called ZHD 96, Zaxcom High Density 96, that we've had for years now.
Yep.
And the thing about it is, it's only 100 kilohertz wide. All the other manufacturers that make digital wireless microphones are 200 kilohertz wide. And going forward, we're going to be even narrower than that. And also, we can have the receivers, tailor their audio responses to be super narrow. So going forward in a 6 megahertz TV channel, we're going to be able to have about 30 transmitters, which is about what the WMAS people that are experimenting with that are claiming, about 32 transmitters. The thing is that because it's channelized, we're not taking up a full TV channel. We're not taking up 6 megahertz. Okay. Right. If you're out on a show and you need 4 transmitters, all that's going to fit easily within a single 1 megahertz. And the thing that I think people don't realize, if you start putting out a 6 megahertz wide signal, number one, you're spreading the available power over that 6 megahertz. So where you would have a 50 or 100 milliwatt transmitter that's occupying 100 kilohertz, that's a very powerful signal. If you take that 100 milliwatts and spread that over, 6 megahertz, you're actually attenuating it on a per transmitter basis, where you're losing I don't have the number in my head at the moment, but it's like 20 to 24 dB or something like this. So, you're not really getting the same quality of signal on a per channel basis. And like I said, if you're out there running 4 channels of wireless, you're only occupying a small amount. And if you are sending a 6 megahertz signal with WMAS, if you did get any kind of intermod signal where that's mixing onto other frequencies, you're not mixing a little 100 kilohertz signal. You're taking 6 megahertz and you're shifting it over here or over there. So it's not exactly a very friendly thing to do on set. I'm not saying that WMAS wouldn't have its applications. I can see it in a newsroom being, a very effective thing. It's controllable, you would think. But it's a different animal. And I think that I just don't see it for film and television production. I don't see it for ENG, where you're never going to, put it in a sound bag, nor could you at this moment, because it's all very power hungry rack mount gear.
Unless you're bringing a generator along with you.
Yeah, well, I think this goes to, what Zaxcom is all about, because if I can leave that question for a moment.
Sure.
If you look at our gear, and I should have brought a ZMT4, because if you look at the ZMT4, it's the same size as the Zippo lighter, and it runs for up to 7 hours. And of course, it records and it does all the great things we did for it. That's what we do. We're all about power efficiency, size, and making sure that you can use our gear not only on the sound cart, but just go right into a sound bag with it. And obviously, you can't be rack mount and go in a sound bag. We've integrated the receivers into the recorders. We have, a few different setups for 8 channels and 12 channels and 24 channels. So, there's a lot of flexibility to the system. And I think where WMAS falls apart is you don't want to have too many channels of wireless in that one basket. Because if you're gonna take a receiver and say, okay, you've got 16 channels in this receiver or 32 channels or whatever you happen to have, where's your backup? What are you doing with that? So, by keeping things relatively small, and our smallest modular thing is 4 channels at this point, not only are you able to, put them together into larger channel counts, but you're able to move them from hardware-wise from bag to bag, where you're not locked into saying, okay, well, I've got a 16-channel receiver, but I need 8 of the channels over here and I need 8 of the channels over there, and you can't do that. So that's, I think flexibility for film and television production and ENG is key to our customers getting good return on their products. We want to make sure that the customers have the flexibility, and when they buy the product, that we're not their partner. When I say we're not their partner, we are their partner in terms of business and what have you, but it's not like you have to unlock the features. When you buy the hardware, you get all the features, and you're not calling us because you have a bigger job and, you need to start paying us money on top of what you paid. That's our philosophy. That's how we do business. And I think it's the right way to do business.
And I just want to rewind a little bit, because you talked about, Zaxcom being for, location sound and ENG. And I think that that's not to say that, an RX-8 or 2 RX-8s would not be a great fit for, a news studio or a theater or something like that, because the Zaxcom ecosystem translates well, with the tiny transmitters and with the TRX IFB and all that stuff. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
That's a perfectly good thing to say, especially because the RX-8 has Dante available for it. So you could put 2 RX-8 in a theater and plug it into the Dante, and away you go.
Yep. And yeah, and have the GUI bridge and an IFB and remote control and all that.
Oh, absolutely.
Jazz.
There's full remote control through the GUI bridge, yes.
Yep. So this is more of a comment, but Sam K said that he appreciates when you break down the technical limitations and practicality of a new product. It's really needed for every audio gear manufacturer. So thank you.
Thank you, Sam. We appreciate that.
Why don't we talk a little bit about just VTX, because I know you brought a VTX with you.
I did. So what we did with the VTX is we basically built two transmitters in one.
Mm-hmm.
We've got the VTX, which is available now. We're just about to introduce it. It's basically like our camera link, except instead of being a UHF transmitter, it's the VHF transmitter. So, which is currently available again in just FM analog.
Mm-hmm.
And I am told by those who have tested it that it actually does improve the audio quality when being received by Comtech receivers. So we've got that improvement, which is nice. But it's still a ZaxNet transmitter.
Mm-hmm.
So if you put this in a sound bag, you're still able to transmit on VHF and 2.4 gigs to our ERX receivers. So it's a dual transmitter, has a built-in recorder. So I believe you can record 2 tracks of audio. If you use the AES input, you can have different audio programs on both VHF and 2.4 gigs.
Oh, neat.
Yeah. So it's like 2 transmitters in one. Very small, so very sound bag friendly. I believe it's 50 milliwatts on VHF. The range is exceptional. Very power efficient. I think it only draws about 200 milliamps at 12 volts. And hopefully it's, a really great transmitter for the VRX. And for those people who want to transition from, like a Comtech system to a Zaxcom VHF FM system, everything is compatible. And I also want to point out that you can turn the FM compander off or on. So if you need a new transmitter for older Phonacs that work in 216, you've got a really nice improvement in audio quality and a modern Phonak transmitter in here if you turn off the compander.
So I think I know the answer to this, but is there going to be a Zaxcom in-ear monitor at any point?
I think the answer to any question like that is we're always working on something, but nothing like that would be imminent.
Okay.
Nothing.
Got it. It's the Zaxcom implant, so you just hear it here.
We've got a lot of things that we are working on. The only one that I can even remotely talk about, and not even to any specifics, would be the new Deva.
Oh yeah, great. So Chris Woodcock just asked for an update on that. So yeah, what's happening with the Deva?
We're working hard on it. I mean, we are very far along the process of working on it, but it's a big project. It's not just a recorder, but it's the matching control panel. Because we have to have everything integrated. It's got to work with wireless. It's got to have a wonderful look, feel, and frankly do things that the competitors just don't. I think our history of our history of inventing the multi-track production recorder and working with people through so many models of Deva. I mean, basically Deva 2, Deva 5, Deva 5.8, Fusion, Deva 16. We've had a lot of experience here. And the new Deva will be incorporating, so many things that bring it into the 21st century. It's hard to believe that the first Deva came out like in 1997, or 98.
Wow.
So there's a lot of things going on with it. We're working hard on it. And we know, from talking to our customers and, people that, are using recorders that aren't supported anymore or recorders that aren't manufactured anymore, they're looking to us to do what we do. And I hope people will find that we do it better than anybody. And also, I think there's a lot of people who are looking to us because of our policies as far as, being very fair when it comes to repair and updates, and, also being an American manufacturer of both wireless and recorders. I think, they're looking, to us for that. And, I'm very proud to, be able to hopefully take the time to do it right.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're not rushing out the machine. We are taking all the steps to make it a great product. And that's all I have to say about that.
Okay. All of a sudden we have a flood of comments. Mike McFadden wanted to know about the ZMT-HH, if there are any updates to the release date on that, because for stage work, it's a missing.
Yes, I would say news on that is also pretty, I don't want to say imminent, but I would hope that there would be news on that definitely at NAB.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully with hardware.
Okay.
So, yeah. Again, we're always working on something is the right answer. But, again, for any product to be shown, to be sold,
mm-hmm.
we have to, be sure that it's absolutely ready to go.
Nice.
But yeah, that's in the works.
Okay. So Justin Ross says that they've been using the ERX for sending audio and timecode to camera, and they love it. Would love to see another version that works in UHF that is smaller. Can neither confirm nor deny, but heard, right? You heard the request.
I heard the request.
Heard.
I did.
And Matija Santro wants to know if there will be a AA powered VTX at any point, or like an actual battery powered without external power.
I would have to say no on that.
Okay.
I mean, it'll be that kind of product for us has always been 12 volt powered.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's a lot of stuff going on in the box.
Mm-hmm.
And transmitters tend to be a little more power hungry. Well, I shouldn't say that. It depends on what we're doing with it. But we like to keep the transmitters as small as possible. And if it's not body wearable,
mm-hmm.
then we really don't want the batteries inside.
Got it. Is there a technical reason behind that? This is my curiosity.
Well, it adds cost, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you already have a lot of electronics in the box,
mm-hmm.
having batteries in it, is kind of limiting.
Mm-hmm.
If we have an external 12 volt input, then you can put whatever battery on to suit your runtime. So, I think it's, if there was an overwhelming need for a specific application where, we realize that fills a niche in the market, I would do it. But I just don't see where, especially in a sound bag, external 12 volt power, which is easily available, that's what you use. And then, you hook it up to a power distribution system,
mm-hmm.
and then it's going to go off and on with the power. So, it's, I could always be convinced to build a product where there's a reasonable market for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that's something we would be doing.
All right. So we need a 12-page dissertation on why this makes sense, and then it'll be considered.
I don't really have to go that far. 11 pages will do.
Okay, great. So Mars says, got their VTX mod for the Nova an hour ago and is excited to check it out. And says, hey, Glenn. But then also says JP. So it's Mars, it's JP, it's whomever it is.
I'm very happy you got it. And the feedback has been excellent from those with the internal transmitter, just on range and audio quality. So, that wasn't such an easy one to do, especially because we have common hardware with the VTX.
Mm-hmm.
We have the same board that's actually FCC licensed as a module to go in anything we want to put it in.
Okay. So you don't have to go through the FCC certification for the next thing, for, say, the Diva
Exactly,
24 or the
yeah.
Diva
We
48?
could just take it and put it into whatever product we want, basically, because it's got that designation of being a module.
Nice. Carlos from Chicago wants to know if the VTX sends remote commands over ZaxNet. I believe it does because it has
does.
a ZaxNet transmitter.
That's right. You can plug it into the GUI bridge and use it as a remote control transmitter for our wireless microphones.
And can it also pass commands via serial port to the old MAX recorder?
No, I do not believe that's the case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Blaine Bailey wants to know if the USB on the VTX could be used to auto-change the settings on VRX units.
Not as of this moment, but I suppose that, if we could identify, what the application is and what it has to do, I suppose, technically it could be done. It sounds like just a software thing.
And that'll be for the digital modulation, I would imagine. Oh, actually, maybe both. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, have to look into it. Great question. How big is the antenna for the VTX?
We have a whip antenna that we sell with the Nova, and I believe it's about 11 inches long or so. So it's certainly longer than a rubber ducky style antenna, but I don't think it's an unreasonable thing. What it does do is gives us an ideal SWR, which is the standing wave ratio, which is something you shouldn't have to worry about as a sound mixer. But the thing is, it radiates really, really well. And we want to make sure that we don't have any what they call standing waves by having an antenna that's mismatched. So our antenna is really good because if you have standing waves, they reflect back into the transmitter. And the transmitter's in the Nova, and we don't want RF floating around inside the Nova. So, but in terms of antennas that you can use any standard Comtech antenna that's 216 megahertz. You're not forced to use our antenna.
Right, and there's actually Ferris from Texas responded to Ray's comments saying that he's seen some people using the Comtech helical with an SMA to BNC adapter.
Well, that's what I mean by rubber duck, I think. Yeah, and you can use it. There's nothing wrong in using it, and if you do use it and it works great for you, then that's good. We're not in the antenna business. We're in the business of supplying the customer what they need for their jobs. And, the last thing I think someone should do is buy something like a VTX, put it on a cart, and feel they have to buy a new antenna. If they have a Comtech transmitter that they're replacing, just plug it in and you're going to be good.
Great. Voice Gajic asked more about the upcoming Deva and how it will be different from the Nova and if it will have a web app.
It'll be different from the Nova in terms of, what you would imagine a modern sound cart based recorder should be. Nova is designed for sound bags, and not to be smart about it, but I think Nova is the best solution you can get for a sound bag because you're going to put a Nova in a bag, and you've got a 16 track recorder, which is most likely more than sufficient for anything you're going to do. You've got the 8 channels of receiver in it. You now have the 216 megahertz VHF transmitter in it. So what do you really need in the bag? You need a Nova and a battery, and that's what you need. Your sound bag is going to be 6 pounds, not 16 pounds, and it's not going to be ridiculous to carry around. And I think, again, that's a Zaxcom thing. Low power, size, portability, low heat output. Those are all the Nova things. But, that's what Nova's designed for. Can you put it on a cart? Absolutely. But primarily designed for a bag. The new Deva is designed for a cart. Okay? It's going to be very much, if you're out there doing episodic television, if you're doing motion pictures, you're going to want a Deva. Are you going to be able to put a Deva in a sound bag? You always have been. You always will be. Okay? But, the basic design is this is your bag recorder, the Nova, and the Deva is the sound cart recorder. So, and can you swap back and forth? Of course you can. But, we know we know very well what the customers are looking for. And I think also, a lot of people that own Devas own Novas,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
because that's what they want to carry around. And, I think the interesting part of what we do is we design products for, like I said, the film TV industries. That's what we're focused on. And that's where I think we excel, because we're not going to take our eyes off the ball.
Follow-up question to that. Do you know if the new Deva will allow third-party controllers?
I'm going to have to answer that with I can't talk about it.
We don't know.
We don't know at this point. The only thing I can tell you is that the control panel that we're making for it, I think would be absolutely the one that you would want. Third-party controllers, the problem with them is that they don't have the buttons where I want the buttons. They don't have the functions that I want, that I think, not that I want, but what the sound mixers want and need. We talk to a lot of people about what these things should be. And, we don't make any decisions without feedback from these people. And it has to make good common sense. So the ideal thing to do is to have our mixing panel, because there's a lot of functions that are Zaxcom-esque. What you get with a, off-the-shelf panel is something that's inexpensive, but something that we don't have control over. It outputs what it outputs. It does what it does, and we want to control both sides, not because we're control freaks, but because we want an integrated, supportable product. Because if we support some panel and they make a change and all of a sudden everything goes to hell in a handbasket, we can't do anything probably to help. So we need to control both sides. Does that mean there won't be multiple controllers that'll work with it? Of course not. We make the Aria, which is a small little panel. It's not terribly expensive, and that'll work with it. The idea is to also have compatibility with the Oasis and the Mix 16. Not that, don't take that as an absolute, because we're still developing product. But, especially the Aria will be compatible with the new one. So it's not going to be where you have this one huge panel, and then if you want to go into an insert car, then, you're kind of in trouble because it's too big. So you can have the smaller panel. And, it's kind of nice also because the same panel is going to work with the Nova and it's going to work with the new Deva.
And a couple of throwback questions here. First one I think we already talked about, but Glenn wanted to know if there's potentially going to be an iOS version of the Nova Touch. I think you said the Nova Touch is
It's pretty locked down,
yeah. And that most of the future things are based on the web GUI.
We're not writing Windows applications anymore. It's all very much, it's all web browser stuff.
Yep.
And I think at this point we've got like four or five different products under the same web browser program. So the GUI bridge gets to be more of a remote control Swiss Army knife every day.
Yep. Mikisuki wants to know about if there's any chance of resuming production on the Deva 24.
No, the big problem with the Deva 24, and the main reason we took it out of production, was we used a lot of AKM chips in it, and the factory burned down.
Right.
And at that point, it was like, okay, what are we going to do? Do we redesign Deva 24? And at the time, because we had the same problem with the Nova 1, we said, okay, you know what? We've got to redesign Nova 1 into Nova 2.
Yeah.
And at that point, it became very apparent that the Deva 24 needed to be upgraded for, a lot of more modern functionality and tracks and what have you. So, it's kind of funny when you're in my business, you've got, you have to pick and choose a little bit because we don't have infinite resources. I've got very, very good engineers that I work with, and, I do a bit of engineering myself, more circuit boards and mechanicals and things like that, and, work to help drive what we are doing. But everyone that works at Zaxcom, especially Howie and Colleen, are very involved in making sure that we're building the right products at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of decisions that go into, running the company and figuring out what the product should be that we're working on, and, coming out with the right products at the right time. Do we always accomplish that? No, we don't. Do we get pretty damn close? Are we ahead of the curve sometimes? Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
It's it's an interesting business. You have to really be thinking about a lot of things when you build products and spec products and what have you.
And this is a bit of a throwback, considering that, that AKM fire was, like 4 years ago at this point, 4 plus, but, that affected pretty much every manufacturer of so many different things. And Zaxcom was one of the companies that pivoted the fastest.
Right.
Yep.
Well, we can do that. I would say that if I have to design a part in or out, it can be done in hours, because we have control of all that.
Got it. Okay. So almost at the elephant. So what might a ZMT-5 offer? So this is we'll get to the bullet in a minute, Mike, but Victor wants to know about, whatever the ZMT-5 might be.
Well, of course, there is no ZMT-5 at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to speculate on it. The only thing I'll say is the ZMT-4 is pretty much the most perfect transmitter that I think you can imagine. If you look at ZMT-4 and the size of it and the runtime, and the audio quality and the recording and the remote control and the 48-volt phantom power, there's not a lot of products that I think we've made that are the perfect product. If you ask me hypothetically what, a next version would do, we would hope to expand the frequency range of it. That's the only thing that, I wish the current one did. So you can take that as a direction, but that's a common theme. I mean, every wireless product we make going forward, whenever we do it, we're always working on something, whatever that happens to be. I would hope to have greater frequency agility than we have. And what we have now isn't terrible. I mean, it's certainly, the products right now are 512 to 660, I believe, currently.
Yep, not too bad.
Not too shabby.
So let's get to the bullet, as Mike put it. So this is about the LA5, the upgrade for the.
Sure.
I know you've been prepared. You have a statement.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. Okay. I mean, certainly I've talked about this online a little bit. With the LA5, what we did is, we had some customers saying that they were having issues at very high SPL with high output microphones like the COS11 and, like the DPA.
The 6060 or the 4060.
Yeah, exactly.
The high sensitivity versions.
Right. Where it's only an issue if you're basically screaming into it. And certainly there are microphones available that are, low sensitivity mics that are designed for that purpose.
Yeah, the COS11 red dot or the 6061.
Well, exactly. And it's always been that way.
Yep.
So when we look at the LA5, basically we're trying to figure out, okay, what's going on here? Where do we have an issue? And the issue wasn't with NeverClip. The issue was basically on the input of the device, that, we didn't have enough dynamic range on, headroom, basically. So, we worked pretty hard to come up with a modification that we could do to current boards that could give us a few dB extra dynamic range so that the transmitter would effectively clip at the same point as the microphone, where I think we were clipping maybe 2 or 3 dB ahead of the actual mic. Not terrible, but okay. So, I realize there are customers who say, okay, well, it should have been that way from day one. Okay, but it wasn't. And it's an increase to the specification of the input dynamic range. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to be in a position where we make a change and, and tell the customer, oh, you have to buy a new product. You could sell yours, whatever. We're not going to upgrade it. No, we don't like to do that. So, we made the modification available for what we felt was a very reasonable price to cover our cost of doing the modification. What we tend to do, or not what we tend to do, what we do is when we make software changes, okay, those are available for free. Some of those are fixes, some of those are upgrades, some of those, like for instance on Nova, we went from 12 recording tracks to 16. We did not charge for that. And there's a lot of value there, I think.
And that was not in the initial spec. Like that was something that you, through software and programming, were able to unlock that was not originally planned.
That is correct.
It was I remember you telling me it was kind of like, oh yeah, we can do that. And then.
Yeah. So, that was a big thing that we decided that, we're going to give away. And that's just one example. So in doing this, we basically stuck to what our business model is, where we give away the software updates. Okay. The only exception to that would ever be if there was something that we put a tremendous amount of time in a new feature that, could most likely earn more money for the customer. Okay. So software we tend to do for free. Hardware, we charge for. Right. And there are many times where, if a unit comes in for repair for something, if there's any changes or modifications that can be done when something comes in, we just do those and the customer doesn't know about it. Okay. In this case, like I said, it's a performance enhancement. And again, Zaxcom is not out there making, piles of money off this. We are simply covering our costs. We're trying to be as fair as possible. And we hope that the customers understand that, we have a cost of doing business as well.
Right. And it's $100, I think.
It's $100. Yeah. And I get it. I mean, I go out for dinner and, what a dinner that used to cost me $25 is now $40,
or $100.
Or $100. Well, I don't live in New York City. No, but I know everything's expensive out there. So, I'm like I said, I think we are being as fair as I think we can be. And I hope the customers would understand. I know there's people that say, hey, it should have been this way from the beginning. But like I said, it wasn't. And, there's, as I explained before, I think there's a lot of things we do for the customers that I think we go above and beyond. And I know, just from some of what I've heard of what our competitors are charging just to get something in the door, not even to get it fixed, just if you want us to look at it, it's X dollars, Yeah. We don't do that. And I don't think we've raised our repair fee for many years at this point. So, that's really all I can say about it. I hope the customers understand. And, like I said, hardware, it takes us time to do it, and the unit has to be retested. So that's where we are with it.
Got it. Okay, more questions. So I hope that answers the question. Mike, thanks for bringing it up so we didn't have to, though we were prepared. All right, so Ferris wants to know if there's going to be an MRX that covers the same range as the TRX LA5, so blocks 20 to 23, the guard band, and the duplex gap.
I can't get into those kinds of specifics on products that are either in development or not released. But again, as I said previously, it's a big goal of mine to make sure that any new product has better frequency agility than things we've made in the past. But I can't promise things.
And speaking of the module-based receivers, will the Deva be able to accept those? The new Deva?
I would say there's a good chance. Again, I can't talk about specifics. Let's put it this way. One of the Nova's best features is the plug-in receivers, because nobody likes cables. No one likes carrying around multiple boxes. And, having receivers hang on the outside of a mixer recorder, in the year 2025 is just not a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Not in terms of weight, in terms of bulk. So, I don't think we would look to develop a product that didn't allow us to take advantage of the technology that we've made. And also, I think you have to look at, we didn't develop the MRXs to be a one-off deal.
Mm-hmm.
We came up with our own slot, and I call it a slot.
Right. It's not the super slot or whatever it is, but it's still a slot.
It's our
receiver.
slot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason we made our slot was because the super slot did not allow us to build a receiver that did what we needed to do. This super slot, not, whether it's a slot, ancient Sony slot, super slot, whatever it is, it's a fixed size. It's a fixed power consumption. It's got only so much I/O. And it didn't have the things we needed it to have, which is why we said, well, we'll just do our own thing. And it's worked out really, really well. I think one of the best things about Nova is the fact that you've got those 8 receiver channels in there and can certainly add more externally. But nobody does that. And, I think the cool factor is off the charts.
Awesome. And so we'll make our last question from another Glenn, from one Glenn to another. Gosh darn it. Well, all right. We'll do this other one first. Will the new generation of transmitters regain more RF power output?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, again, we're not... Who said there's a new generation of RF transmitters?
Glenn, we know there's always something new coming. We just don't know when.
There is. I think... Okay. And that's a really great question because I don't think that's where the problem is in this world, okay? You can make transmitters that have higher output power, and that's going to fix a few things for you. If you're in a high RF noise environment, again, Times Square, New York City, Los Angeles, that's helpful, okay? You know what's more helpful? Better receivers, okay? And if we're going to end with this, I want to talk about it.
Oh, yeah, we're not. We got more questions, so we're not ending with it. So anyway, go ahead.
The VRX is a direct conversion receiver, okay? And if you look at what's out there in terms of receivers, it's no longer, what we call a super heterodyne world, okay? Receivers are available with different kinds of technology, okay? In looking at what we do, we developed on our own a direct conversion receiver. Now, what does that mean? It means that the RF at whatever frequency you're trying to receive is down converted to what we call baseband. And when you do that, you avoid the intermediate frequencies. Why is that important? Because whenever you receive something in a super heterodyne receiver, you down convert it to an IF frequency. When you do that, you're not just receiving the frequency that you're intending to receive. You're receiving another frequency that you're not intending to receive, that you have to filter out. And you can't always do a wonderful job filtering it out because they call that the image frequency. And the image frequency can be really strong. Like if you've got that, walkie-talkie on it, if you've got an ambulance on it, if you've got anything on it, it can raise the noise floor of what you're trying to receive. So that's not great. Super heterodyne receivers deal with that, but it's not like it's for free.
Right.
So direct conversion gets rid of that problem. The other problem it gets rid of is in multi-channel receivers, it gets rid of IF crosstalk. Okay? If you get within a foot or 2 or 3 of a Zaxcom receiver, multi-channel, you can cause IF crosstalk because you got a very, very strong signal. Usually you don't notice this because if you're receiving transmitters that are, let's say, 10 feet away.
Mm-hmm.
They're both very strong. So the IF crosstalk is going to be maybe 40, 50 dB below where the signal that's coming in from the other transmitter.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not going to affect you. What you might see is if you had the receiver up and you have two receivers up and you're only receiving one transmitter, if it is super strong because it's, just a few feet away, you might see signal on the other receiver. And I know that, that can happen to us,
Mm-hmm.
and then I know it happens to other manufacturers as well. Direct conversion eliminates that because there is no crosstalk, because there is no IF.
So would you say, so I know the VRX is direct conversion. Are there UHF direct conversion receivers in the pipeline?
We're always working on something. Can I just have like a little shot box? So
Yeah, exactly.
Just hit that button. We're always working on something.
Perfect.
And but that's the technology that I think makes sense because it allows us not only to get those advantages,
mm-hmm.
but when we work with baseband, we're actually able to better control the filters that apply to the modulation that we're using. So if we're using, ZHD 96, which is only 100 kilohertz, or we're using older stereo modulation or mono, which is 200 kilohertz, we can narrow up the filter. And when you narrow up the filter, you improve the decodability of the signal. It's all physics.
And that's what leads to better range.
Absolutely. If you can push the noise down
mm-hmm.
and push the signal up, it's going to work better. And that, I think, is a lot more effective than raising the power on the transmitter because having higher power transmitters can cause other problems.
All right. So I'm going to read one more comment, and then I'm going to do 4 yes or no questions, and then we have got to go because I have got to eat lunch before I fall over, and we've been talking for an hour and a half.
What's for lunch?
I'm going to have a salad. Just to go back to the LA5 comments, and I think I know the answer to this, but Carlos says, one of the grievances that LA5 users have about the cost of the mod is that they feel that previous LA models did not suffer the same problems, not making it an upgrade, but rather a repair. Can I take this based on what I think you said before?
Balls in your court.
All right, I'm ready. So my understanding is that the LA5, because it does 5 volts, is really a new version of that. So it changed the input on the mic preamp, and that changed the specification on the input, and that this is, it was to spec for the original publishment, but the 5 volts actually increased the amount of output on those lavs that it can now use.
Right.
And that caused, this new issue. So, while Glenn understands that it is not the same spec, it isn't the same spec. It's not the same transmitter, and that's why it's an upgrade.
The change to 5 volts on the mic pre definitely contributed to this issue.
Okay, great. All right, so rapid fire, yes or no questions. You ready?
I'll do my best.
Will there be updates to the GUI bridge?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Great. Updates to the GUI bridge, bug fixes, additional functionality, all that stuff.
This is not yes or no. I mean, the GUI bridge is our, is something that, we're going to be supporting probably to the end of time. It's, it's the way we think things should be going.
Do you think there'll ever be a version that doesn't have Raspberry Pi?
Well, it's Linux.
Okay.
So, Linux will run on a lot of machines.
Got it. Will there be implementation of higher sample rates for the Nova 1 and Nova 2?
No.
Okay. Have you ever planned to hire an industrial designer to adjust your UI?
I don't know that that's an industrial design thing. To me, industrial design is much more, what buttons look like and what have you. I think what he's looking for is ergonomic engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And we constantly get feedback about, if things are too tough to use, not sensible, and we take that very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's more more driven by customer feedback than anything else, because I think the customers know best, how things should work.
Mm-hmm.
I can't hire someone and say, hey, you figure out how to use this on this sound card or in this sound bag. So we get the feedback from the customers, and that's always seemed to work well.
I mean, doing things like this, where you come into our studio a lot, and this is the first live answer session we've done, but
Right.
I think it shows how accessible Zaxcom is as a company.
Right. Yeah, we can't operate in a vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
It's not good for us. It's not good for the customers. So, we plan to be doing this for a very, very long time.
And last question, and before I ask this, thank you to everybody who asked questions. There was a lot of engagement. Would you consider integrating a quarter 20 mounting holes onto future camera mountable receivers?
I would definitely do that.
Okay, fantastic. Glenn, is there anything else you want to say in 30 seconds or less? No, I'm just kidding. Is there anything else you want to say?
Well, aside from thanking you for this opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
I'm really happy to be there. As you pointed out, this is our first one-on-one like this. I think, we got to talk about a lot of things that are important to the customers and, frankly, important messages for us to get out there, because, again, without this type of interaction, it's tough, I think, sometimes for the customers to understand who we are and what we're trying to accomplish. And I would say that, overall, just trying to, be a good member of this community and produce products in the United States and care about what we do and, our customers. I mean, I think that's important.
Great. Well, Glenn, I really appreciate you making the trip and braving the traffic and congestion pricing if you had to deal with that, and the parking and just coming to Queens. So we really appreciate it. And again, thank you all for your comments.
Yes, thank you to everyone who chimed in with questions, and they were all very, very good and appropriate.
Great. Thank you. So again, thank you all for watching. You can watch this video and more at gothamsound.tv. You can follow us on very many social media platforms. What is it? Facebook, Instagram, X, Twitter, LinkedIn. I don't know. You can also email us at info@gothamsound.com if you have any questions or ideas for future content. And anybody that asked a question that I did not get to, I promise I will email you directly the answer. Thank you again, and have a great rest of your day.
I don't consider myself a beauty, by the way.
Aw, thanks,
wrote
Norm.
that?
Norm said it.
Norm
from Canada. Canadians are so polite. All right, take care.
Take care. Bye, everyone. Thank you.